Hello, and welcome to Supervisory Skills 101, improving organizational performance through leadership, communication, and relationships. My name is Bettina Fiery, and I will be facilitating this approximately 1-hour webinar. I've been working with the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Management Assistance Team for about 4 years, and prior to coming to AFWA, I worked 30-plus years in human resources and organizational development. As I said, I work for the Management Assistance Team, and we are part of a multi-state conservation grant where we are at your service. So at the end of this webinar, if you have any additional questions about this content or want more information about our products and services, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Today's webinar is about essentially giving you information to lead your people from hire to retire through effective dialogue, feedback, and documentation. In other words, performance management. This webinar will either validate what you already know and do, or it will provide you with a new set of tools and skills to springboard your team toward success. So I mentioned performance management. What is performance management? It's an ongoing process of communication between you and your employee. Performance management clarifies expectations, identifies goals and objectives, provides feedback, and evaluates results, ensuring that you and your employee are on the right path. When does performance management begin? Performance management begins at the interview process. Making a hiring decision is one of the most important decisions a leader makes. While you have the final decision, it's important for you to not rush the process and make the right decision. Consider internal talent first. That provides you the opportunity to grow professionally your employees, as well as provide an opportunity for succession planning. You have the opportunity during the interview process to set your performance expectations and share your vision for this position, as well as your team and your department. So while you need to be considering and sharing your expectations, at the same time, you need to be mindful of what employees expect from you. They want from you to be respected professionally and personally. We all have two types of needs, personal and practical. Meeting the personal needs of your employees first will better equip you to achieve the practical expectations in which you're seeking. How do staff know what your expectations of them? We talked about sharing your expectations at the time of the interview, but once the employee has started employment, now what? Do you simply rely on the employee job description? It's vitally important that you clearly communicate what you want, how, and when, and share why your expectations are what they are. Communicating your expectations provides authenticity of you and gives meaning to the employee's work. Here's a tool that I have shared with managers and supervisors to help them kickstart performance conversations. On the x-axis, on the bottom line, you'll see how the employee is able to actually do the job. We have many employees that are excellent doers. But when you look at the y-axis, the appropriate behaviors that support your vision, mission, and values, You'll find sometimes that while employees might be great doers, they're not good at working with others. What you're trying to achieve is moving your employees up the bar to that top right corner of star performers, being both excellent doers as well as getting along well with others. So when you're thinking about and using this requisite skills behaviors matrix, what you want to be thinking about, how can I raise the bar? And who do I need to have conversations with about rising on this chart and getting to that top right corner? So how do we raise the bar? We need to identify normalized behaviors, and I'll talk to you shortly about what normalized behaviors are. Once you've identified your normalized behaviors, then you need to decide what is your expectation, and then communicate what your expectations are of the employee and your team. Normalized behaviors are those behaviors that aren't egregious. They're not major policy infractions, but they're behaviors that are not up to par. They're not what you're seeking for an effective team. Some of those behaviors might be inappropriate email etiquette or time and attendance, making personal calls while at work, being late for work or late for meetings, taking long lunches or long breaks. What are these behaviors that you've dealt with or just ignored because you just didn't want to have to deal with them? Normalized behaviors fall into this gray area of our expectations. It's negative behavior on rare occasions. They're not always offensive. They could be mildly rude, perhaps saying good morning without a smile, providing minimal guidance to stakeholders. They're just not quite the behaviors you're seeking in a high-performing team. To raise the bar, you have to resolve your mixed feelings about, I guess I have to talk with this employee, right? I guess I should share what my expectations are. Yes, you do. It's worth the conversation. Stop wasting time and energy feeling frustrated with people's performance and share with them what your expectations are and why. So think about in your department, what are the normalized behaviors in that gray area that you need to clearly communicate these behaviors are no longer unacceptable and what the behavior looks like to be acceptable. So here's an example of a script that you can use to springboard your employees into action and into meeting the expectations you want. To make the vision of, name of your agency, a reality, I'm convinced that we need to change some of our behavior. What might have been okay in the past is no longer okay because it impacts the customer experience. And the customers can be people in the agency in addition to external stakeholders. Share with your employees it's a new day, and then take ownership and share with them, I owe it to you to be very clear about what I expect now, and I expect you in join me in living this new culture. So this is just a sample script. Use your words, but be authentic in what it is you are wanting to achieve for your employees, your department, and your agency. When you do this, share with them what the current situation is. Share with them what of those normalized behaviors, and I would focus just one at a time. Share with them why it's no longer acceptable, what your new expectation is, and why you're having that new expectation. Provide them with some empathy in that this is new, and newness, change causes some ruffled feathers, so you understand it might be difficult. You understand they may not understand why you're doing this now, but share with them your vision for your department, and that will help them gain greater awareness, understanding, appreciation of what you're doing and why. And then it's very important that the people on your team say back to you what your new expectations are, because what you want to let them know is that if you are not meeting my expectations, then we're going to have another conversation, and that conversation will look very different, and it'll be one-on-one. So practice using the words, I expect. I expect you to be on time. If our office is open from 8 to 5, I expect you to be at your computer with the computer on, ready to respond to emails, phone calls, what have you. Saying I expect is not rude, is not demanding. It's being clear. This slide was created by Quint Studer once upon a time ago. Quint Studer was the CEO of Baptist Hospital in Pensacola, Florida. He left the healthcare industry and started his own consulting firm, and part of that illustrates all of these ingredients, I'll call them, to achieve a high-performance team. You have an objective evaluation system. You provide your employees with leadership development. Must-haves are things that like standardized processes for rewards and recognition. I'm going to talk about the performance gap here very shortly. Additional ingredients in creating breakthrough performance in your team are having standardized policies and procedures, and then what are the accelerators that continue motivate your employees to achieve the goals that you're setting each year, and creating a very successful department and agency. This performance gap is primarily the topic of this webinar. The performance gap is looking at all of your employees and how do I move them from this bell curve where you have 58% of your employees being middle or mediocre employees, and moving that bell curve to the right to having more high-performing employees. In virtually every department, we have this breakdown of high, middle, and low performers. So what do I mean by high, middle, and low performers? Let's look at the high performer. This is an employee that is eager and motivated to not only do a great job personally, but also be a team player and help you and your department move forward. When we're having conversations with high performers, the goal is to re-recruit, recognize, and retain. Re-recruiting means sharing with the employee all the incredible skills and assets that make them so marketable in your department. It's either the reason why you hired them, or if you inherited this employee, congratulations. But share with this employee the great skills, attitude that he or she provides in your department. Recognize high performers for the individual work that he or she is accomplishing. And retaining a high performer is continually challenging and providing opportunities to the employee so that he or she has the opportunity to grow and develop in your department and in your agency. Now, a middle performer, and I'll share with you that middle performers know they're not high performers. They recognize the areas where they need growth and development. They may not have that level of confidence and competence that a high performer has. So what you'll see in a middle performer is they're pretty good. They're not always consistent in the level of performance that they're providing, and they may have one or two areas of opportunity for development. The goal with a middle performer is to reassure, re-recruit, and then develop those areas that he or she might be falling short on. The reason we reassure a middle performer is, like I said earlier, that they know that they have opportunities for growth and development. So they're not as confident. So providing that reassurance lets the middle performer know you're doing solid work. Here's what I see in you. That's the re-recruiting. Here's what I see in you that makes you a solid employee. But I have concern about whatever it is. Maybe they're tardy. Maybe they engage in gossip. Maybe they're late with assignments. So pick one area of development and focus on that during this conversation. Now, the last we can pretty much pick with our eyes closed what are areas or the definition of a low performer and areas that cause them that low performing behavior. Points out problems in a negative way. They're quick to point out problems, but by golly, they drop it in your lap and want you to fix it. They blame you for everything that's gone wrong in their life, whether it's at home or at work, it's you. Low performers are masters of the we-they conversation. They is generally administration. They can be passive-aggressive. They think they'll outlast you. And like I said, they blame management or you for all the issues. The goal with low performers is for you to decide whether or not this person is worthy to remain in my department or whether you have to start the process of working this employee out of the organization. When you start to work with low performers, actively have these one-on-one conversations, I'll share with you that 1/3 of your low-performing employees will choose to improve. It might be that this is the first time anyone has ever taken interest in him or her. It might be the first time this person has ever received feedback on their low performance. So 1/3 will be like, wow, this my supervisor really cares about me. So I'm going to make the choice to improve my work behavior. 1/3 of your low performers will no longer have fun because you're not playing his or her game. Many of you know that working with low performers, and that's only 8% of your team, can take 80% of your time. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll flip that and spend 80% of your time with the high performers because you'll appreciate how much synergy is created when you are having these conversations and what both you and your employee will gain. Finally, 1/3 of these low performers will need your assistance to help them vacate the agency. What this slide is showing you is that the low performer on the bottom, their work ethic never changes. It is always flat. Your role is to manage this performance gap between your low performers and your middle and high performers. If you choose not to address low performing employees, then your high and middle performers are going to hit a wall and their performance is going to start to decline. Nothing drives a high performer out of an organization more quickly than a manager or supervisor who does not deal with a low performer. Think about it. Why would high and middle performers continue to want to come to work, do all the work, achieve the goals and objectives, and they're receiving the same amount of pay as your low performers? So reward and recognize high, middle performers and work with your low performers in such a way that they're either moving up, or you are having to move them out. When you choose to make this decision and have these conversations with high, middle, and low performers, you will achieve this new bell curve and moving high and middle over to that far right. So the conversations that you are having with high, middle, low performers are very different. And I'm going to share with you what each conversation looks like. When you are having a conversation with a high performer, you want to tell them where the agency is going. You want to tell them what our department's role in helping the agency achieve its vision, mission, and goals. You want to thank the employee for the incredible work that he or she is doing. Outline why they are so important. You can see here the re-recruit, recognize, and retain. Asking if there's anything you can do for them is providing that opportunity for greater retention. You don't know unless you ask. The middle performer conversation is that old adage of the sandwich feedback method. You know, here's why you're really, really good. Got an opportunity for improvement that I want to talk to you about. But you're really, really good. You need to be cautious that you choose this sandwich method only for your middle performers, because a high performer doesn't want to hear, and maybe there isn't anything that he or she needs to develop. They want to move forward. They want to help you move forward. We're going to talk shortly with the low performer that the sandwich method isn't going to work with the low performer because they're just going to hang on to the positive that you said and not hear the developmental opportunity that is needed. So only use this sandwich conversation with middle performers. The low performer conversation is an intervention. An intervention is basically creating an environment where choosing to remain the same is worse than choosing to change my behavior. So when you are having a conversation with a low performer, be cognizant of what is my aim with this low performer. Have I had multiple conversations with this low performer and he or she is not changing their behavior? That's a case that is a sign that's telling you perhaps it's time for me to start the documentation process and getting this person out of the agency. These conversations all look different on paper, and we're going to talk about that here very shortly. What I want to share with you is all of the accomplishments you will achieve once you choose to start implementing the high, middle, low performer conversations. When you're meeting with your team, I have this saying that you have to love who you lead. It demonstrates care and concern. It also shows your level of authenticity and your level of integrity, that I care about you to help you and our team and our division achieve success. You are showing commitment to their professional development. You are showing appreciation for all your employees. Like I said, love who you lead. The low-performing employee just didn't show up one day in your department and like, I'm not doing anything. I'm calling it quits. He or she may have never had the opportunity of a caring leader take interest in him or her. So this is your opportunity. It also lets all of your staff know that you're not tolerating subpar performance. Again, going back to the early part of this webinar, raising the bar and sharing what your expectations are and holding your employees accountable for those expectations. And you are role modeling value-driven leadership. You're role modeling meeting personal needs first in order to accomplish the practical needs. So you might be asking yourself some of these questions. Wrong way. What if a person is good technically and good with students or coworkers or stakeholders, but not all the time? That goes back to that behavior skills matrix. Where is this employee on the line? If they're good doers, good technically, but not good with others, then this is a low performer. If I deal with staff performance issues and other leaders do not, will people think I'm a mean leader? The people who will think you're a mean leader are your low performers. Other leaders in the agency are going to be looking at you like, wow, what are you doing? You're doing some amazing things in your department. Tell me more. What about the employee who has an attendance problem? Well, if you're not here, you're not achieving goals and objectives. So you might be super smart. You might be an incredible doer, but if you're only here intermittently, you're not a high performer. What if all past evaluations are good? I bet you've had conversations with people who have had it with Harvey Schmedleck, and they go to HR and they say, I've got to get rid of Harvey Schmedleck. The first thing that HR is going to do is look at the employee's personnel file. And if they find that all the past evaluations are good, which happens quite often, today is a new day. Remember that script, that today is a new day, and now you can start the process of moving Harvey Schmedleck out of the agency. Same thing is true as if you've had a subpar performer in your agency for a long time. Again, might be somebody that it's just never been dealt with. He or she never had that conversation. But today is a new day. I hear this question a lot. What if HR protects people? The answer is yes, they do protect people. They protect the employee, they protect the manager and supervisor, and they protect the agency. They're protecting everybody to minimize lawsuits. And then finally, what if I have not documented well? Okay, that's what this is about. This is starting a new process, sharing your expectations starting today. So today is a new day. So we talked about starting the documentation process. What is the purpose for performance documentation? Performance documentation justifies purpose and importance, and it's not just for low-performing employees. Document all of your conversations. This helps improve employee performance. The employee is seeing it, and share with the employee why you're documenting. It improves employee performance because it gives you a tracking method of, this is the conversation we had today. Let's meet again in 3 months and see how you're doing. It helps you keep track. It clearly communicates with employees. If things are in writing, both you and the employee are working from the same script. It motivates employees for the basis of training and career development and performance reviews. It gives you the opportunity to reward and recognize good performance. It establishes a file, and this file can help you when you are having your conversations throughout the year. It helps to justify when you want to promote someone, if you want to give someone a raise, or if you are in that process of moving the employee out of the organization. So again, performance documentation is not just for low performers, it's for everybody, because it keeps everybody on the same page as you and your expectations. Performance documentation is objective and concise. It's timely. It's signed by the employee, you, and if you have a process of needing a secondary approver, obviously get that signature. If you are documenting not a performance improvement plan, disciplinary action, These words are critical, including immediate and sustained improvement. I have found that when you are disciplining an employee and you give them a timeline, for instance, they have an issue with attendance. So you are communicating with them that in the next 3 months, if you call in sick, I'm going to need to see a doctor's excuse. Now, this is based on historic behavior, so don't just start this right away. If you don't include immediate and sustained at the end of those 3 months, guess what that person's going to do? He or she is going to call in sick because they have this down. They know how to be a low performer. They know how to push you to the limit. Also, when you're documenting for disciplinary action, let them know what the consequences are if there's no improvement. Again, put it in writing, and then the employee can't say to you later, well, I didn't know. You didn't tell me that this was going to happen, so why would I, blah, blah, blah. So these last two bullets for low performers are critical so that he or she knows what the plan of action is and what the consequence will be if they don't meet that plan of action. Again, clearly communicate when final is final. So I shared with you earlier why human resources insist that you document. It's not to give you a headache. It's not to frustrate you. A lot of people don't like to do it, and that's why they have that bell curve of 8% low performers, 58% middle performers, and 34% high performers. So document with all of your employees. That minimizes liability, and it ensures an equal and effective, efficient process. So written performance documentation includes all the important information about behavior and performance. It justifies compensation, discipline, terminations, failure to promote. If you promoted Susie instead of Stan, you've got documentation to warrant why is this person getting promoted or not. Now, a performance improvement plan, I screwed this up earlier, this is not disciplinary action. A performance improvement plan is you actively working with an employee who's also actively working with you to improve his or her performance. If you can get the performance improvement plan, get involvement from the employee, he or she is more willing to put that plan into action. So do it together. When you are implementing a performance improvement plan, that's a lot of P's to say. When you are implementing a performance improvement plan with an employee, also be thinking about, this is me wanting to manage up my employee. So you've already had that mindset of, am I managing up or managing out? If you're managing out, now you're starting the progressive discipline documentation. There is no defined order for these steps. If the issue warrants a more severe consequence, you should initiate the appropriate level of documentation. What you always want to do is involve human resources when you are in the progressive discipline documentation. Involve human resources, involve your higher up, the person you report to, so that everybody is on the same page of what is the plan of action for this employee, and that everybody is not, no one would be blindsided by, well, I got to fire Stan today. What? What did he do? So keep everybody in the loop. If separation is the only answer, you want to be able to answer these questions, that you have accurately documented the performance or behavioral issues, that you are prepared to sit in front of this employee and share with him or her that they are no longer employed by the agency. What I have shared with people in my years of working in human resources It's much harder to lay off an employee than it is to terminate an employee, because a layoff is nothing that the employee did or didn't do. Termination, you have given this employee the opportunity and the choice to improve. If this employee has chosen not to take your lifesaver and grow in the organization, then it's his choice to be terminated. Have you engaged HR? Remember, you cannot terminate somebody without keeping everybody in the loop, and that includes your executive support. Who do you report to? Is everybody aware of why we're getting rid of Stan? So now we're going to pause. We're going to switch gears. We spent a lot of time on having different performance conversations with high, middle, and low performers. We talked about the benefits of documenting all your conversations, high, middle, and low performers. Now we're going to talk about feedback. Feedback is a distinction of the conversation, because the high, middle, low performer conversation is planned. It's a timed event. You may do annual reviews, biannual reviews. These are distinct, long-term, 45-minute, hour conversations, one-on-one. Feedback occurs, off the cuff. It can be via email, via phone call. It can be a scheduled time where you want to share what you've heard and acknowledge the employee. It's a gift. If you are giving praise and recognition, that's awesome. If you're having to give feedback because perhaps you've given a stretch assignment to one of your employees and he or she is just struggling, then you have, the developmental feedback. So you want to make sure you have the right environment. Get the employee's perspective first. Remember, it's a dialogue. You want to hear and understand and empathize with your employee and their perspective. So when you are providing empathy, it's not necessarily agreement. It's just you understanding where the employee is coming from. Giving developmental feedback is just that. The intent is to develop, not punish, not discipline, develop. And remember active listening skills. And for so many of us, that's the hardest part, because we have to take time to listen to not only the words, but the song beneath the words. So when you are active listening, use your verbal skills of keep it open-ended questions and focus on the person. Be aware of your body posture and eye contact as well as theirs. When you are noticing differences in the employee's verbal and nonverbal behavior, share with them that. Share with them, I'm curious. You say you're not upset, but I can see through your behavior that you seem upset. And again, with the process versus the content, that's listening to the song between or under the words, truly understanding the employee's perspective and what's getting in his or her way of achieving success. Then, once you've got that understanding, reflect back to the employee what you heard, but then clearly communicate, this is what I expect, and how can I help you achieve what my expectations are, and how can we work on this together. When you're actively listening, I call it whole body listening. Whether you are providing feedback via an email or on the phone or face-to-face, be cognizant that you are present with that person. So if you're on the phone, I have just looked at the phone, picturing the employee in front of me. I use email last, but we'll talk about that here later. Face-to-face is your first option. If you can't do face-to-face, then pick up the phone. And if you can't do that, email. Certainly, if you're giving positive feedback, and any way I can get it is great. Do all the above. Email, phone, and face. So feedback guidelines, some things to remember in addition to whole body listening, is understand your intentions. Feedback is to develop. It may also be to reward and recognize. Timing. Make it as soon after the event that you're giving feedback for, whether it's positive feedback or developmental feedback. Make it timely. Describe what you are providing feedback on. How many of you have worked for people and they say, good job, you did a good job today? Well, I did 6 different things today. So what particularly did I do well at what task? Be specific. Empathizing, again, is not agreeing. It's understanding the employee's perspective. I want you to assume an attitude of helpfulness rather than power and domination. It is a we thing. It's power with, not power over. Provide examples. Be specific when you are giving feedback, whether it's to a high performer or a low performer. What specifically is it that you are giving me feedback on? And again, properly document. It helps you, helps HR, it helps the employee. Everybody is singing from the same songbook. Now, I also am well aware that many of you manage employees all over the state, so it's difficult to do that face-to-face, which is the primary way. So if you can't do it in person, then use the phone. When I say never over email initially, what you may want to do is tee up the conversation that you want to have over the phone in an email. Share with the employee what it is you want to talk about on this specific day and time so that the employee can be prepared for your phone call. And again, document. Document, document, document. If you have a difficult conversation, meaning we're starting the disciplinary process, as I indicated, give a heads-up email. Then schedule a time and determine if you want HR on the call. I also, when I say third party, sometimes if you are a new supervisor, you may want to have a colleague at the same level as you with a little bit more seniority sit in with you so that they can share with you afterwards, i.e. give you feedback on what you did really well and where you have opportunities to improve. They can also help you if you get stuck, because I'm sure many of you have had planned conversations with low performers, and man, they go left in a hurry, and it's like, whoa, how do I get back? So what I encourage you to do when you're having a conversation that might be disciplinary in action, write down what it is you need to say. I also encourage you to share with the employee that this is the focus of the conversation. I'm not going to respond to you if you're going to talk about, the we-they mentality and you start getting very passive-aggressive. These difficult conversations are necessary conversations, and you own the conversation. So an employee can go down that rabbit hole. You don't have to go with them. Keep the conversation on track for what it is you need to communicate. Here's an example timeline going back to implementing the high, middle, low performer conversations. If you want to start this process, share with them that you are going to start having one-to-one conversations. I would call them one-to-one conversations. You know that they're high, middle, and low performer conversations. But you don't want to say that to the employees, because what you want to do is have one-to-ones with your high performers first. List them. I know all of you know who your high, middle, and low performers are. You know that with your eyes closed. So set up meetings with your high performers first. Then with your middle performers, and then finally with your low performers. Trust me that everyone on your team will eventually understand and see what it is you're doing. And I will caution you that your team may experience some disruption. Because remember, low performers are cognizant of that we-they mentality. And they're going to buddy up with your middle performers. And remember, middle performers are cautious. They're less confident and competent in their skill and ability. So low performers will hook up with the middle performers and start that gossip mongering. Well, you know what he's doing. Back to that we-they thing. He's going to, start creating distress when there's really none to be had. You may be having your one-to-ones all lined up, and Harvey Schmedleck, one of your low performers, he's scheduled to meet with you September 13th at 2 o'clock. Today, he's outside your door. Hey, I've got 20 minutes. You want to meet with me now? Low performers are so good at causing you to shift your agenda and what you do and make you work more. So even if you have 20 minutes today, don't meet with him. You just thank Harvey for his initiative, but say, I've got you scheduled for September 13th at 2. I look forward to having our conversation on that day and time. So now we are going to give you an opportunity to put to test if you could, what you would say and do with high, middle, and low performers. So these are just some examples that I'm going to share with you. The first one is a high performer. She is full-time staff in your IT department, and she's an exceptional employee. She's super friendly with her coworkers. She's been with your agency for 5 years. She orients new staff. She continues to improve herself and the profession by, continuing to read and write. She wants to have a bigger voice, and she's thinking about returning to school to get her master's degree. So she's not only a top performer in your department, but she's highly engaged in the university setting as well. I think she might teach. So you're meeting with Sandra, and the goal is to re-recruit, recognize, and retain. So you want to share with Sandra her incredible skills of being so knowledgeable, so giving, so willing to share her knowledge with others. Thank her for all she's done for your department and your agency and the community with her publications. And then ask her, how can I help you continue to grow? How can I continue to challenge you in your role? Maybe you can offer to assist her with information about the school she wants to go to. Maybe you can provide her with some colleagues that went to that same school or studied in the field that she's interested in. But to a top performer, you want to remove barriers or provide resources so that he or she can continue to professionally grow and develop. These are fun conversations to have. And I'm hoping at the end of this webinar you'll recognize, and once you start actually doing these conversations, you'll experience that synergy that's created when you've got somebody who wants to work with you and help you and take you to the next level. So that the more you have conversations with high performers, you're creating a high-performing team, and you can do more things for your team and your department. You can breathe easier because you have a team of high performers. Here's an example of a middle performer. Remember, middle performers are solid employees. They just have 1 or 2 developmental opportunities. So Jim is somebody that is a good employee, got my air quotes up, most of the time. He has the highest collections and is the most productive. That's great. Wouldn't that be great if he was that way all the time? But what might be impacting his ability to do that is he likes to waste time by playing practical jokes on his coworkers. And you're also noticing that he's spending an awful lot of time with a coworker. So you got two issues here. But what you want to do is just focus on one, whether it's the practical jokes or it's the too much time with Pam. So you do that sandwich method of conversation, support, reassure, support, and provide that developmental opportunity. So you are sharing with Jim. He is a solid employee. You appreciate that he is one of your most productive employees with the highest collections. However, you have a concern about playing practical jokes on coworkers, and you're concerned about the impact it has on the coworkers, his relationship with the coworkers, and you're concerned that he might not be as productive ongoing if he continues with these practical jokes. So as of today, Jim, I'm asking you to cease and desist with these practical jokes on your teammates so that you can go back to and continuing to be our most productive employee. And I thank you for that. What questions do you have for me? What are your thoughts? So on and so forth. That's a middle performer conversation. And then finally, we've got this Charlie dude who, wow, he's really put himself in a pickle by doing these inappropriate behavioral things. So again, your choice, involve HR if you have to. Are you going to do a manage up or a manage out? Are you going to start the disciplinary action because of these behaviors? Or is he somebody that's like, wow, this has never happened with Charlie before. I don't know what's going on. Let me take the time to actively listen to his viewpoint, what's going on, where you can then provide him the opportunities to manage up. What are we going to do here? But you're clearly communicating with Charlie that this is absolutely inappropriate, is not acceptable in any shape or form, and if it happens again, whatever the disciplinary process you want to take. In this example, it's our same Sandra, but looking at her behaviors and what's written here, you want to ask yourself, well, is she still a high performer, or is she turning into a middle performer? Do I have to, are there any developmental opportunities here? The answer to that is no. She's still a high performer. But you being the effective leader you are aware of how your employees are doing. Remember at the very beginning of this webinar, employees have expectations of you that you will recognize them personally and professionally. And by you noticing that Sandra's mood and emotional state is different, you're sharing with her your level of integrity, authenticity, that you care about Sandra and that you are at her service if she wants to talk with you in more detail or not. It's her choice. But just by the mere fact that you noticed, took interest, and offered yourself to her is synergistic for both you and Sandra. Now, poor Jim. Jim was our middle performer. You had that sandwich conversation with him, but the little guy just chose to not heed your feedback. And so he is now turning into a low performer because he is declining. So now you, again, make the choice. Am I going to start the performance, the disciplinary performance documentation, or am I going to do another sandwich conversation with Jim? That's your choice, your call. But he is choosing not to improve his behavior with that middle conversation that you had earlier. And then finally, we're back to Charlie. Again, with Charlie, you took the time with this low performer a couple of months ago, shared with him what your expectations are, and he's improving. So here's your opportunity to do this sandwich because he's now turned into a middle performer, recognizing and making the choice that I want to improve my work performance and behavior. But it's clear that you want to say to Charlie, keep it up. I want this behavior sustained. I knew you could do it. Recognize that he's made this effort. So switch. This is no longer the intervention. This is developmental opportunity to share with Charlie, I'm proud of you. I knew you could do it. Let's keep it up. This is my expectation for staff behavior in my department. We just covered a lot of information, provided some brief examples. Again, I shared with you at the very beginning of this webinar, if you have questions, if you want any assistance in starting your high, middle, low performer conversations, if you want any type of coaching, if you have to have a low performer conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, my name is Bettina Fiery. I can be reached at bfiery@fishwildlife.org, and my phone number is 304-876-7395. I am on the East Coast. Feel free to leave me a voicemail if you don't get me live, and I will return your call. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you received some nuggets to assist you, and if not, perhaps it just validated what you already are doing, and keep it up. Thank you so much. Have a great day.